Hi, so now that the Tier 20 set bonuses have been data mined, they've not been announced, they've been data mined, I thought it might be interesting to go through what our new artifact abilities are going to be like and what our new set bonuses are going to be like when 7.2 comes out, Tomb of Sargeras. So it very much looks like the tier of the Blade of Justice. I really don't know how this is going to affect various things and if that means they're going to have to nerf a few to bring it a bit in line. Because if we have a look at it now, so we'll start with the tier 20 set bonuses. So, and remember, all of this is subject to change, of course, and it's quite common for them to change some of these things before it actually goes live. You know, this is the point at which it's only just data mined and it's not even really in yet. So the 2 set bonus for the tier 20 is going to be that Blade of Justice generates 1 additional holy power, which means it's going to straight up do 3 holy power, which is pretty good. It's a lot better than having random procs of holy power as we have with the Nighthold set. I really don't like that at all, because this one, it's just, you just have to adjust. Instead of thinking, oh, I mustn't use Blade of Justice if I've got 4 holy power or more, now it's going to be 3 holy power or more. And then the 4 set bonus, Judgment also increases the damage of Blade of Justice. So it's all sort of buffing our Blade of Justice. We use it anyway. I mean, it's not going to really change a great deal in terms of how we would use them, other than, as I say, we need to be mindful of the fact we'd only use Blade of Justice on 1 or 2 holy power at this point. But it strikes me as being a little bit interesting, especially when we have like cleave fights, especially in Mythic Plus dungeons, where Divine Hammer is already pretty strong. I wouldn't say it's exceptionally strong, but when you're starting to look at this, you're starting to think, well, is that going to make it a bit too strong? I'm not sure. Obviously, they'll do an overall balancing act, but just to bear in mind, just in case any little things happen that sort of adjust our abilities, if we see a little nerf, don't think it's necessarily a nerf overall. It might just be rebalancing. But it doesn't end there, because of course those are just the set bonuses. Not necessarily everyone gets the set bonuses. You've got to do some raiding, even if it's LFR, to be able to get these. And you won't necessarily get them straight away anyway. I mean, what are we now? 4-5 weeks into Nighthold? I think 4 weeks into Nighthold. And I've only just got my 4 set tonight, and I had to sort of pretty much coin that. Conqueror's not dropping for us. But, so it can take some time for you to get these set bonuses. But the artifact different matter was supposed to be sort of getting straight into that. And if we look at the sort of 4 new artifact traits that have come in, one of them is Righteous Verdict, which is that Templar's Verdict, we're using Templar's Verdict, increases the damage of your next Blade of Justice by 5%. And it almost seems to me that, I don't know whether that, it's a weird one, because it's Templar's Verdict increasing it, not Divine Storm. So that sounds like, well, in a cleave situation, are we going to do a weaving thing, like use a Templar's Verdict and then a Blade of Justice if it's Divine Hammer, because that can do a lot of damage with a lot of mobs, and then back to Divine Storms? You know, is there there might be some trickiness there where we're thinking, yeah, every now and then we might want to use a Templar's Verdict instead of Divine Storm, although if there's lots and lots of mobs, I would think not. It's just a weird way to phrase it, because in single target DPS, for example, you're unlikely to use 2 Blades of Justice between Templar's Verdicts. Sometimes it happens because in case you get a proc, but very rarely. So usually you would use that after it. So it just sounds really weird. From a cleave point of view, you'd be thinking, ah. But it's another thing that, certainly for single target, is going to buff your Blade of Justice. So we'd have to keep an eye on that in terms of overall damage. The next one, Ferocity of the Silver Hand. This is just a single trait point we're going to be spending. Straight up increase to damage and stamina. I think this is partly to compensate for the fact that we'll be losing the 20 final points that we've been spending. The ones that give us up to 14.5% extra damage, and as well as a load of stamina as well. That's disappearing. So what it looks like they're doing is they're just putting this in instead. I know it's not quite the same as 14.5, but it's the same for everyone. And presumably, again, rebalancing will take place to make sure they've actually said that we're not going to lose damage out of it. The next one, again, it's a single point one. Blessing of the Ashbringer. So when your greater blessings are active, gain Blessing of the Ashbringer, which grants 2,500 attack power. Which, of course, you'll always have your Greater Blessings active. It's quite funny, isn't it? Because the original form of Greater Blessings, when we had Greater Blessing of Might, One of my, I had a lot of criticisms of it, a lot of them. But one of the main ones as it got towards launch was people are not using these. I used to end up with, in pugs and see other Retribution Paladins, they weren't using their Greater Blessings really. So it's almost like you've got a trait here to remind you to use them. Or maybe it's just a bit of an understanding that Greater Blessing of Kings and Greater Blessing of Wisdom are not that brilliant. I think they're sort of okay though. Our Restoration Druid does remind me if their wisdom is about to disappear or has disappeared. But I mean, I put Greater Blessing of Kings on a tank. I don't know that that does any good. Certainly the tanks don't complain if it falls off. But yeah, maybe it's just a way of reminding us to use this buff. Because after all, this buff doesn't really benefit us in a raid situation or a group situation. We wouldn't use it on ourselves. We use it on others. So I think it's just a behaviour to encourage a certain sort of behaviour. But we get a straight up amount of attack power from that. And then Judge Unworthy. Avenging Wrath reduces the cooldown of Judgment by 50%. This is the sort of big one that we're looking at here. The sort of last one we'd be getting as far as I can tell. It's a bit weird at the moment. Again, it's sort of data mined in a way, some of this thing. But Avenging Wrath reducing the cooldown of Judgment. Obviously, this is a weird one. And again, it'll be interesting to see what else comes in, what sort of tuning goes in. Because at the moment, if I were to look at this, I would think, why? If you have to do a lot of ad swapping, fine. I mean, I'm sort of thinking second boss in Morve Souls, where you've got a lot of target switching. For that, it'd be really useful, because it's really annoying to put Judgment on something, get a Templar's Verdict off, then you've got to switch target. Well, Judgment's on cooldown now, but you've built up enough Holy Power to do a finisher, but I ain't got Judgment, So from that point of view, it's pretty good. But, you know, are they going to retune things to the point where we'd be thinking, well, we want to use Judgment on cooldown? Because as things stand at the moment, although you don't have 100% uptime on the Judgment debuff, you don't need it. Because the time between it falling off and you being able to reapply it, you can spend building Holy Power. It's only a couple of seconds anyway. You can build a bit of Holy Power. So in reality, you never, in most situations, in fact, in almost all situations, you never actually have to spend without the Judgment debuff on your target. So it seems a bit odd to me. I suppose one cunning thing you could do, but this would actually mean ad swapping in a cleave situation. So at the moment, Judgment obviously puts the debuff on our target plus one other mob that's nearby. Now, we can get the talent Greater Judgment and put it on up to 4. But, you know, as standard, one mob plus another, so we get 2 targets. Now, in theory, what you could do is you could put Judgment on that, and then you could switch to target to the one that didn't get a Judgment debuff, put it on that, maybe it'll hit a 4th one as well. So you may be able to cycle around like that. Now, I'm not sure I would like that playstyle, but it is a possibility. Let's imagine there's sort of 4 or 5 mobs, cycling between them, so always switching when Judgment's almost ready, switching to a mob that doesn't have the Judgment debuff on. But that would take a bit of micromanagement, be very fiddly, but in theory would allow you to do a bit more damage with your Divine Storm in those sort of situations. Whether that ends up being what we do with that, I don't know. So at the moment, I'm going to say Judge Unworthy seems a funny one to me, because I don't feel that I really need it, but I can see potential in it as well. So there we are. That's what the set bonuses are looking like at the moment, and the new Ashbringer traits are looking like. Again, I'll just reiterate, all subject to change. I'd be amazed if they all stayed like that. It's possible. But, you know, I think it's still pretty early days. I know the PTR's been out a few weeks now, but I still feel it's pretty early days for this. I still feel you've probably got a couple of months anyway. I mean, Nighthold hasn't been out for that long. I know they don't have to bring out the actual raid with 7.2, but I don't think 7.2 is that imminent. I still think it's a good couple of months away, potentially. So, you know, there's going to be plenty of movement on this. But if any of you have opinions, of course, obviously comments down below, because I find them interesting. But make sure you post it in the PTR forums on either European or North American forums there, because they will be seen. Blizzard have made a commitment to make sure that they actually view more of these posts, that there's going to be better communication between the community managers and the developers, so that the feedback is really taken on board. So anyway, I hope you find it interesting as always. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. And until next time, I'll see you later.